All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast, where we're covering the Big Ten preseason awards here. If you are enjoying the content, please make sure to like and subscribe. We appreciate all the support. But we're going to kick things off with who wins the Big Ten this year? Who's the favorite? Cody, let's start with you.
Yeah, it won't be a bold prediction for me. I'll be going with the Purdue Boilermakers. I think they're not far and away the best team in this league, but I do think they're kind of in a tier of their own when it comes to sitting at the top. I think their offense is way too good to fail. I think they're a for sure top 3 offense for the entire season. They just cover too many bases, and they have a new element with their post up offense that's going to be very tough to stop. That's not going to be Zach Edey level post up offense, but I do think the combination of Drake Hoffman-Wren and Oscar Clough is going to be pretty feared throughout this entire league. And then, you add the shooting across the board on the wings with guys like Fletcher Lawyer, a guy like Omer Meyer, who's supposed to play somewhat of a role this year, CJ Cox, and then, you piece it all together with the elite pick and roll maestro and Braden Smith, and everything kind of all comes together. So we talked about some defensive issues that we have with this team, but ultimately I think the offense is going to be too good to, make them not win the Big Ten.
Marcus, are you in agreement? You rolling with the Boilermakers?
I am. The preseason #1 team in the country. And, for all the reasons Cody just stated, they've got Braden Smith, one of the, for my money, the best player in the country. He's going to be a high-level initiator here. He's going to get everyone great shots. The offense has, the highest ceiling. They're per Torvik projected to be the #1 offense in the country. There are defensive issues here for sure, but like Cody said, I think they're in a tier of their own in the Big Ten, despite there being a lot of, really good teams in this league, particularly in that top half. So just Purdue just stands out from a talent perspective on the offensive end between their shooting and, their interior offense as well. They're just going to be too good. Plus coaching and Matt Painter, of course.
Let's dive into those other teams a little bit. Cody, who else could contend with Purdue for the Big Ten title?
Yeah, that second tier of teams, I would say it's Michigan and Illinois. I think they both have super high floors. I think Michigan is going to be among the best defenses in the country. And then when you bring in their front court trio of Yaxel Lendeborg, Adai Mara, and Murrez Johnson, and it's going to make them a really tough team to beat on both sides. I mean, we have some issues with their perimeter offense, with their shooting, and they might turn the ball over a little bit too often. That was kind of their kryptonite last season. But I think this is going to be a really high floor team under Dusty May. I just think they're just a tier behind Purdue. And for Illinois, I mean, they probably have the most talented roster, like across the board. When you look at the entire scheme of things, you look at the depth pieces on this roster, I think they're probably the most talented offense in this league. The Avicic twins bringing like a different element to this offense. They're going to be able to invert the floor, and it's going to be the guards that are going to be kind of carrying the load with their rim offense, and it's going to be the front court that's going to be carrying a lot of the load from a spacing perspective. They're going to be very tough to guard, and if they can all gel together, I think it creates a high ceiling on this side. There are a few issues I have with the guard play, kind of meshing early in the year. I think the shooting with those guys makes it a little bit of an issue, and the defense isn't overwhelming for me. So that's why I had them a tier behind. Then just 3 like longer shots for me in this league would be like UCLA. I don't love the offensive makeup, especially we talked about it a little bit with Donovan Dent's fit in this Mick Cronin offense. It's a little more methodical. So ultimately I didn't really consider them, and then USC, if USC reaches their ceiling on the offensive end, I could definitely see them being top 3 in the league. And one final team, I don't really think they're going to necessarily be competing to win it, but I do think Wisconsin has very high offensive upside with a defensive floor with Greg Gard's transition denial scheme is going to make them a good team in this league.
Marcus, anyone else you want to add or anything to add to the teams that Cody said as well?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty much in agreement. I had all the same teams. I did have in my like contenders category, I had Michigan, Illinois as well. And then I also threw UCLA in there. I think they're separated from those other two, but I think they're kind of in the mix as well. I just they are a little bit of a longer shot than Michigan or Illinois, but they have enough talent, I think, to potentially get there. And then in my deep sleepers, I had USC and Wisconsin as well. I think USC, obviously, we talked about like their lack of a point guard. Who's it going to be? But I think the defense can be good, right? Chad Baker-Mazara, I think with some more usage, we could really see his talent shine through even more than we saw at Auburn last year. So I think they could definitely get there as well. I'm pretty high on USC.
Who's the MVP of this league, Cody? Let's go with you.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious. Braden Smith is in contention for National Player of the Year. He's probably the favorite for National Player of the Year. He's taken huge strides pretty much every single year as a college player. You saw the passing traits with him early in his career, and he started to finally put it together as like a perimeter shot creator. And he's gotten much better in pick and roll every single year. And I think, yeah, like Marcus mentioned, he's the best point guard in the country. He's probably the best player. So didn't really need to overthink it with this guy.
Marcus, are you in agreement? And who else are you maybe thinking of that could compete with Smith for the Big Ten Player of the Year?
Yeah, I went with Smith as well for all the same reasons. Like I said at the beginning, he's the best player in the country in my eyes. Alongside him, some other names worthy of mentioning. And, I guess I'll just lead right into my first team. I went with Bennett Sturts at Iowa. I went with Bruce Thornton at Ohio State, Yaxel Lendeborg at Michigan, and then Trey Kaufman-Renn, Braden Smith's teammate, at Purdue. This league is loaded really with a lot of really good players, similar to how we viewed the Big 12. It was really difficult to narrow names down. There are a lot of guys that I really wanted to put, on the first team that I just couldn't find a spot for them. And there are guys I wanted to bump down to first team, but it's can I really justify this? So ultimately, that's who I went with for my first team. I think a guy like Bennett Sturts, or maybe if Ohio State really surprises people, some of these models really like them. Torvik has them fifth. If they can really surprise and Bruce Thornton has a big year, maybe Bruce Thornton can be in the mix. He's as good a guard as any in this league. So, we'll see. But that's who I went with my first team.
Cody, let's hear your first team.
Yeah, I don't really care what Torvik thinks. I don't think Ohio State's really good enough. I do like Thornton. He's going to be a really good player. He's actually the one guy that I left off of the first team so we're a little bit different. The guy that I added was Nate Biddle. I think he's going to be just so important on both ends of the floor for Oregon. We talked about some of the issues they have from a creation standpoint and just an offensive punch standpoint. And like I mentioned in that as well, I think Biddle is one of the most underrated defenders in the entire country. He's just an amazing two-way impact. But yeah, the other guys were all the same. I don't really see anybody competing with Smith for Player of the Year, but I think the one guy that could is Bennett Sturts. If you see Iowa get into the top 3 or 4 in the league, and he has the same production as he had at Drake, when he averaged 19 a game on almost 6 assists. I think he could really compete, and I think it's something that I think would intrigue voters, at least to give him some first place votes for that award. But yeah, the other guys were the same for me. Yaxel Lendeborg from Michigan and Trey Kaufman-Renn from Purdue. I kind of considered putting Kaufman-Renn on the second team just because I have some fit concerns. He played mostly at the 5 last year. He played alongside first, whichever one you want to call the 5, you can, but he's going to be a true 4 this season. And, it led to less usage. Obviously he had Edey by his side playing the 5, demanding all of the usage. But when you bring in another post up oriented guy in Oscar Clough, I think it brings up some concerns with how much is he getting the ball. I think it's pretty fair to say he's going to have it a little bit less than he did last year. So that would be my only reason to put him on second team.
Marcus, who's your second team?
Yeah. My second team, I'll start. I had Nate Biddle on there. So like Cody was saying, he's going to be really important, I think, on both ends for Oregon, as long as he's on the floor. I went with my guy, Nick Martinelli, who it pained me to not put him on the first team. I really wanted him there. And I think he there's a world where he does get there. But I think Northwestern team performance is going to have a lot to do with why he doesn't end up there. I went with Chad Baker-Mazara at USC. I'm really high on USC, and I think he's going to be the main reason why. I went with Tomislav Ivisic of Illinois. I think Illinois, like we talked about, it's going to be one of the better teams in this league, and he's going to be, to me, like the number one reason why. His ability to rebound on the defensive end, his ability to space the floor and do some different things skill-wise as a big man on the offensive end. He's a really important piece for Brad Underwood's team. And then the final guy I put on here was Donovan Dent at UCLA. I think, UCLA is going to be a top 5 team in this league in my eyes, and Donovan Dent's going to be the number one reason why as the orchestrator of that offense. Obviously, we have some concerns with the style change, right? Mick Cronin, more of a slower-paced guy. Donovan Dent really wants to push the tempo. So, I could see him not ending up here just because of the clashing of styles and his numbers maybe taking a little bit of a hit, his efficiency taking a little bit of a hit. But ultimately, to me, he's just too talented not to put here.
Cody, let's hear your second team. Who do you got?
Yeah, I went with Donovan Dent as well on my second team. I mean, I probably would have put him on first team if he was in like any other offense besides UCLA's offense. I just think the fit is so weird. It's going to be a very weird, like, contrast of styles between what Dent is used to and what Cronin has been used to his entire coaching career. Really, he did the same thing same types of things at Cincinnati. So it's going to be interesting to see. I did go with Bruce Thornton on my second team, Martinelli and Ivisic as well. No need to add much there. Did you say you had Wesley Yates on your second team also?
No.
Okay.
Baker-Mazara was my.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I went with what Wesley Yates is my final second teamer. I think there's real upside for him to average like 20 a game in a faster paced offense. And he was a guy that really emerged in the second half of last season at USC, where Baker-Mazara is at now. He averaged, I think Wesley Yates the last like 16 games of the year last year averaged somewhere between 17 and 18 points a game. So I think there's going to be real upside in a faster paced offense. And I do think he's truly the number one option there. So
Marcus, who do you got for Defensive Player of the Year?
Before we go there, I just wanted to quickly shout, like I did throw a third team out there, just, of guys that I thought deserved some love as well. I went with Wesley Yates here. I went with Pharrell Payne. I think at Maryland, he's going to be a really key guy for them, as we talked about in the Maryland team preview. I went 2 Wisconsin guys here, Nolan Winter, John Blackwell. And then the final guy here, Tyler Bilodeau at UCLA.
Cody, did you go third team as well?
I didn't even put Winter on there, and I was so high on him. But I did put Blackwell on there. I had Tucker DeVries at Indiana, Andreas Stojakovic at Illinois, Jackson Shellstad at Oregon, and then Chad Baker-Mazara, who you had on your second team.
All right. Defensive Player of the Year, Marcus?
I went with Nate Biddle. I think his ability to impact the game as a rim protector, and also kind of laterally, the way he's able to move and, guard some perimeter guys in some ways, I think makes him extremely valuable on this end of the floor for Oregon. So that's why I went there. But there's a lot of really good defensive players in this league. And, it's a very deep league, obviously 18 teams. It's a hard award to win. And I think Cody, I know what direction he's going with his award, but he'll be probably his guy.
Yeah, Cody, who do you got?
It sure is my guy. He's not going to be playing for a great defense, but it's Tatum Connerway. I think for my money, he could be the best guard defender in the entire country. He's an elite on-ball defender, and he's one of the best defensive playmakers in the country. And he showed that last year. He had a 5.5% steal rate, which was third nationally. He's just going to have to do so much for that Indiana defense. And I think there's even more upside for him to force more turnovers just because there's going to be so much on him to really do that. It's just a roster that's not, it's just pretty lacking from a point of attack defense standpoint. And I think he's really going to shine amongst the rest of those guys. And I think voters are really going to notice that. Obviously, I mean, I considered Biddle, like a few other guys that I considered. I think Amarian Dickerson is an awesome defender who's at USC. He might not even start there, and I think he would get like, there's a real chance that he makes the all defense team in this league. I think Kylan Boswell is a really good defender as well at Illinois, and Chad Baker-Mazara, obviously Amarian Dickerson's teammate. Like that USC defense is going to be awesome, and the fact that they have multiple guys, like I even considered like Jacob Kofi to contend for this award. So that's just going to be an awesome defense over there at USC.
Marcus, do you have a breakout player of the year?
I do, and this one was kind of cutting it close on our stipulations to it. I think we allowed it. I went with Jacob Kofi. Played 52% of minutes last year. I think this year he's, as you just mentioned, he's going to be a real anchor on the defense for them. I think he has real upside on the offensive end as a passer. In short roll situations. He has some floor spacing upside. He was 10 for 41, I believe, from 3 last year. So I think there is something there for him as a shooter. With 3 years left of eligibility, there's certainly some runway for him to improve in those areas, and I kind of expect him to.
Cody, who do you got? Did you go with Kofi or a different route?
I did not. I did consider him, but I ultimately went with like a deep sleeper here. I went with KJ Wyndham at Northwestern. I think Nick Martinelli's really going to need a number 2 guy, and he's going to really need a true perimeter option that can operate in pick and roll and be that high volume shot maker. And I think KJ Wyndham can do that with more time on the floor. I think he only averaged 6 points per game last season. It was at 5.6 points per game and 16.8 minutes per game. I think there's a real chance that he gets to 30 minutes a game and averages 14 or 15. So there's going to be a big usage leap. And I think there's more room for efficiency as well. Like he got thrown into the fire as like the main guard late in the season when guys went down with injury, particularly Jalen Leach and Brooks Barnheiser. And he was asked to do a ton. He only shot at 38% from the floor last season. But I think with a full off season of development, like learning how to play the lead guard position, I think he's going to be much better.
Marcus, who's the coach of the year of the Big Ten?
Yeah, I was really torn on this award. I gave it to Matt Painter for his addition of Oscar Clough. I think this team's just going to be too good to not give it to him. But one other name I threw in there. If this team gets into the top 4 in the Big Ten, I think he's got a real shot, and that's Eric Musselman. I think this roster he's constructed, I think the defense they've got, I think, if Chad Baker-Mazara can really be a problem, then I think he could definitely win this award and kind of right the ship at USC a little bit.
Cody, who do you got?
I am in agreement. Those were my top 2 candidates, really. I think you could say Ben McCollum as well. He's won everywhere he's gone, and like I mentioned in their team preview, like I'm not going to start doubting him until I actually see him lose a stretch of games. He's just a phenomenal coach. It's gonna be a weird style. It might not be the most necessarily like fun style to watch. They're going to play probably the slowest pace in the entire country, but his teams have been efficient, and Iowa has more talent this year. So I guess we'll see what the upside looks like. If they get into the top 5, I think it's definitely Iowa, or it's definitely McCollum's award to win. But I do envision Purdue winning this league by probably 2 games, and it's probably going to be tough to not give it to Matt Painter in that situation.
All right, and who's in the tournament, and how many teams made it? Who may be on the bubble is there? Marcus, what do you think?
I said 9 teams make it. I went with Purdue, Michigan, Illinois, UCLA, USC, Wisconsin, Ohio State, and then 2 of the 3 of Michigan State, Indiana, and Iowa.
Sparta's not going to be happy.
Yeah, I mean, I think they will probably be one of those two. I just think that the half court offense, as we discussed, is kind of a real glaring concern. The overall efficiency of the perimeter group is a little bit concerning. So that's why I have them a little bit further down the board. But, we'll see. I mean, Tom Izzo, obviously, as good a coach as there's been in college basketball over the last, 40 years. So, they could easily prove me wrong. But I think two of those three get in.
Cody, who do you got in the tournament?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that there's a chance that Michigan State doesn't make it. I think that's on the lower end of outcomes. I just think Izzo defenses have such a high floor. It's going to be tough to keep them out. But I had 10 teams making it. I think this is a really deep league. Obviously, I don't think there's as many national title contenders as you look in the SEC or even the Big 12 that's super top heavy. But the depth in this league is arguably the best in the entire country, and that's including the SEC. I think there's a real chance that they get just as many teams in as the SEC this season. So my teams: Purdue, Michigan, Illinois, UCLA, USC, Michigan State was a for sure for me. Iowa's for sure. Wisconsin, Oregon as well. I think they could be a little bit dicey, maybe sitting on the bubble for a lot of the year. So it was those 9, and then one of Indiana, Ohio State, Maryland, or Washington. It is a bit odd for me to say that Ohio State. Well, it's not odd for me to say, but comparing to the analytical websites, Ohio State looks like a for sure tournament team. I'm just much lower on them from an offensive perspective. I don't think they take good enough shots. So ultimately, I think that's why they're going to be sitting on the bubble. I did expect before diving into Indiana that they were going to be a for sure tournament team, but I have some defensive concerns. So ultimately, I think they sit on the bubble for a large part of the year. But I mean, there's a chance they end up getting 11 or 12 teams in. I just think there are a few teams down the board that I'm a little bit lower on.
Marcus, before we wrap things up, do you have a bold prediction?
Yeah. I said that the Big Ten is going to have 2 teams in the Elite Eight this year for the first time since 2018. I think it's going to be Purdue and one of those others. To me, it's one of those 3 of Michigan, Illinois, or USC in my eyes. But we'll see. I think, but it's going to be the first time in 7 or I guess 8 years by the time we hit March Madness that we've had 2 Big Ten teams in the Elite Eight.
Cody, you got a bold prediction you want to throw out there?
I do, but I realized I accidentally already spoiled it. I said the Big Ten and the SEC get the same amount of teams in the tournament. I think it's or even the Big Ten gets more. They might get 11 and the SEC ends up with 10. I think the SEC has a little bit less depth this season. So ultimately, I think there's a real chance that the Big Ten does get more teams. And I don't think as a whole they're better, because I think there's obviously more teams with championship upside in the SEC. But I do think the depth of this league is awesome.
All right, that wraps up the Big Ten for us. As always, thank you for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast.